Will, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm so happy to have you. And as I told you, I think you're the first guest I just don't know that well.
Yeah. Well, you've got a good excuse, Matt. We've separated by a long distance and a
We are
difficult time zone.
we are separated by a long distance, although we are contemporaries. We graduated around the same time. Like we have had lots of reasons to overlap. We just haven't managed to make that work. But that's why I'm going to get your story today. So I want to take you all the way back, Will. I want to talk about like 7-year-old Will, like young
Yeah.
Will. What did young Will think he was going to do? Because presumably it probably was this.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. So I'm trying to think back, 7 years old. I was living in a regional city in Australia. Pretty sporty kid, kind of good at school, like not the best, but okay. I lived on a 5-acre property, so it was a really big piece of land, kind of on the outskirts of a city of around 60,000 people called Wagga Wagga. So it's an Aboriginal, Wagga Wagga is an Aboriginal word that means many crows. If Aboriginals repeat a word, that means there's lots of it, it's plural. I grew up like really outdoor kid, lots of sports. My mum was a social worker. My dad was a research scientist for the government, so both public servants. Wagga was kind of a big public administration centre. Really good childhood. My parents both emphasised the importance of kind of community and education, um, and just being well-rounded. And I think when I was 10, my dad moved the family over to Winnipeg in central Canada. He did a late career PhD in kind of agricultural science and took the family over. It was an amazing experience. Just got to, Canada is very similar to Australia in a lot of ways, but also climate-wise, very different. So it's a great
Especially
experience.
especially
Yeah,
for a sporty outdoor kid like you, right? Suddenly there's
yeah,
winter
yeah,
and suddenly there's I can't always be outside, in being outside and being around. You mentioned
yeah.
you said, "Hey, I was okay at school, maybe not the greatest." Did you were you like a science kid? Were you a language kids?
Yeah. So dad was a scientist, so I'd go and sometimes hang out in his lab and meet his kind of all the lab technicians and then mum worked kind of with a lot of kind of vulnerable families, so she's kind of often out in the field as well. Um, and I just think I guess easy to post rationalize, but kind of those kind of exposures and careers rubbed off on me a little bit. Good inspiration. And then Wagga's just a really interesting city. So if you're in Australia, check it out. But it's a really diverse town. It's great for kids. So lots of sports, lots of kind of community activity. And then Canada similarly. Something about when it's Canada when it's minus 40 and everyone just has to go to like the same building at the community center and hang out. It's something really nice about just everyone getting together, and I really enjoyed that as well.
So you were a social kid. I like being with people. I like being around others.
Yeah, I think so. Probably probably skew towards kind of more introvert, but I definitely love kind of had lots of friends, love hanging out. Yeah, love being around the community for sure.
And what did you think you were going to do? Were you going to grow up and be like mom and be a social worker? Do you think you said you were a sporty kid? Do you think you were going to go play rugby? Like, what did you think the future held for you?
Oh yeah. So I genuinely didn't know. Like I got interested in lots of different things. So moving to Canada, it's like in the summertime, it was like I was actually a field hockey player. We got to Canada and mum's like, all right, summertime, you got to choose a sport. Field hockey's not really one of the options here. You got soccer or baseball. I was like, I could do soccer. And kind of got into it, got pretty good at it. My brothers and I used to play all the time. We'd play right through the snow in the winter in Canada. And that kind of, at one stage, I wanted to play professional soccer. And actually moved to Sydney to kind of play in a kind of an elite league. Obviously didn't turn out, but and then yeah, just lots of like just explored lots of stuff, and then eventually uh, just found different things I liked and explored lots of stuff. Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit. I mean, so you're in high school, you're starting to sort of think about what your future is going to look like. You know, you came from a educated family, right? Dad has this late
Yeah,
stage
yeah.
PhD. Was college always on the vision for you?
Yeah, I think my mum kind of told my brothers and I we had no choice. Like, and my mum really particularly valued education, and uh, I think I freaked her out finishing high school. I was like, I actually don't know what I want to go to university and study. I'm just going to take a year off, just kind of do not much. I worked some random like retail jobs, and I worked in a warehouse like packing boxes, and I think my mum started to panic. But rather than kind of rush into a career I wasn't sure about, I think I did a little bit of travel, kind of just met lots of different people, just read lots of books and just tried to kind of find what I wanted to do. And eventually, through high school, I kind of enjoyed mathematics and economics to a degree, and I thought I'm going to try that. So I ended up doing Bachelor of Economics here in Sydney. And I think that was probably my first foothold into kind of the career I found
And
myself in.
and as you got to college and started to do economics, did it did it feel like, the contents matched the label, right? You were like, I think I have a vision of what this is, and then I get here and it is that, or did it feel like, oh man, this is not what I thought it was?
Yeah, that's a good question. It, I think largely, yeah, like it's obviously heavy stats, mathematics, um, but I was always very interested in the people side and trying to understanding human and society. That felt lighter than I thought it would be, but I didn't mind it. Like I liked the rigor, I liked the structure, like a very kind of structured thinker. But always interested in, I guess that where I wanted more was like, okay, how do I connect this to kind of people and humans and kind of real world? And that was kind of always lurking a little bit, I guess. And I always had this interest in psychology. I can remember for a long time, like hanging out with my grandfather and my dad, and then just always observing what's going on with people around and just trying to understand everything. And then I kind of just had this kind of interest in psychology, but I never knew like how to approach it or like what to do with it. And I thought that just always sat there. But economics was great, and I think a really good kind of foundational, kind of structured way of understanding the world.
Did you, as you're getting, as you're getting farther in college, did you have a sense that like, and then I become an economist, and then I go get a PhD? Like, what did you think was going to happen next? Or are you freaking your mom out
No,
again and saying, I don't know?
I gotta say, like a lot of my 20s was kind of trying lots of stuff. So I finished the Bachelor of Economics, the undergrad, traveled a lot. So just kind of hung out around the US, um, Europe. I actually finished my last year of my undergrad was in Pittsburgh. So I did a study abroad, um, and just tried to figure out like what next, and just found myself into some interesting careers. Um, the for example, like an early job was like working for a retail consultancy where we would so kind of a demographics consultancy where we would work with big box retailers and try to understand demographic patterns and where your customer base is and kind of what their demands are going to be and forecast that and support that. So that was really cool. And really kind of started to bring together that kind of the economics background with like the real world kind of human patterns. Um, I did a little bit of work designing remuneration packages for sales staff. So how do you motivate and incentivize people? That was really cool. And then eventually some stuff kind of more like ethnographic and observational, and just slowly kind of collecting these kind of seemingly disconnected, but kind of a little bit kind of common denominator of lots of different early careers. That was a lot of my 20s was just kind of exploring lots of stuff.
But it does sound like in that exploring, you found some patterns, right? There's a
Yeah.
human angle to this, there's a structured angle to this, there's sort of predictive angle to this. What was the worst job in there? You did a lot of jobs.
Oh,
What was the job that you were like, nope, it's not this?
oh, I very early on, I worked at Target. I was on the floor like packing shelves and uh they're like really awkward shifts and like it was a long way from home. I was commuting. I was definitely wasn't into it. And they're just like one day they're like, you don't want to do this, do you? I was like, nah, I don't really want to do this. So I had a mutual moment where it's like, no
We
one can be
both
as no.
agreed this is not maybe the fit.
Yeah. That was very early on. And there's lots of like little jobs like that where it's uh but fun and interesting and meeting new people, trying stuff for sure.
Well, and you know, I think it's if you're going to do retail demographic prediction, having worked in a Target is not a bad, tr
Yeah.
there's something about having done things in a very applied way that can give us a unique perspective. Uh,
Yeah. And then I should mention my dad, like in the summer when I would come home, so I was living in Sydney through end of high school and I would come back to Wagga and dad would get me a summer job in his laboratory. And it's like, it was always, because I was the kid coming back to for the summer job, I got the job in the lab that no one else wanted to do. So like cleaning the lab equipment and stuff. And um, I used to just put some music on and just kind of just get to it and do the work and um, probably made a few errors and didn't do a great job. And dad's like, yeah, they've banned people listening to music in the lab from now on because of you. So
we
uh,
discovered that distraction is maybe not useful.
it wasn't a multitasking job, that one. But uh, good to hang out with dad, but I wasn't cut out to be kind of a lab assistant.
I hear that. I hear that. I hear that. So you're in your 20s and you're kicking around, you're trying to figure out what it means and
Yeah.
where it means and where do you first start to think about like, I know you were at Colliers for a while. Like where do
Yeah.
you start to see your career start to emerge, some of this behavioral stuff to start to emerge?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking about this. Um, and it's often hard to kind of pinpoint the exact moment.
Of
It
course.
was, I remember one memory that's quite vivid is sitting in a lecture hall here in Sydney, listening to an economics lecture, and felt like just a normal day, a normal session. And the topic of the lecture that day was on bounded rationality, which is kind of this idea that humans can't be kind of completely rational, kind of um, accessing and processing all available information. We have this bounded rationality. And this lecture just kind of stood out to me. This was like, wow, this is okay. This one feels very different. And I kind of just started reading, went down like that rabbit hole of books and just started reading and like no YouTube back then. So it's just accessing anything I could about this, got into some early heuristic stuff and Gigerenzer. This is long before like behavioral science and behavioral economics was really being talked about a lot. Um, and then eventually just started exploring that. I found my way into and then sorry, I was coming home from work one day and I was just thinking like I had a really good job and I was on a really good path, being kind of mentored into kind of really senior positions. It's kind of probably around 30 at this point. And I just remember having this reflection of like this, I don't know if I can do this for the next 50 years, like I don't, this is good, but I think there's something else out there that I'm supposed to do. And I just picked up on like my history and trying to put it all together and what I liked and what I was reading. And I came across this, and then I found this Wikipedia page on behavioral economics. I just found it like just randomly searching. And then um, that kind of struck me as like, wow, this is actually a thing. By the way, that it was really badly written. It was so early, like someone had put this thing up, and it was exciting enough for me, and I just started. Okay, this is interesting. Maybe because it builds on my economics background. It's kind of got this like that psychology. angle that I've been interested in. I'm going to explore this. Got a long career ahead of me, right? Um, and I found this lab in the UK, so the Centre for Decision Science and Experimental Economics. It's like one of the big labs that's kind of really moving into this space at the time. And I was in the UK, and I looked up the professor and said, "Hey, can I come and get a coffee?" And Professor Starmer invited me in and said, "Talk to me. Like, what are you interested in?" Just went through all the books I was reading, kind of my background, what I was interested in. He's like, "You should apply. You should come over here and work. Come work with us." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Really? Like, move to the UK? Like, got a good job?" And
Yeah,
he's
so
like, "Yeah,
so
you
this
should."
is happening while you're at Colliers and on this sort of growth leadership
Yeah, yeah,
trajectory, and like, and then you give it up.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and not like I'm 30, right? And on a really good path. Love Colliers. It was an amazing experience. As I said, had a lot of support, had a really good kind of future opportunity. But then walked home one day and like met Chris in the UK on my visit, and I thought I'm going to apply for this. And then the unconditional offer letter came back and said, "Hey, you've got a spot in the program." And then really difficult conversation with my boss at the time, which was a huge mentor of mine, and it was tough. And I say, I'm going to try this thing, and
Was he
eventually,
was he understanding, or he was like, this is a terrible idea and you're making a big mistake?
uh, so he put me onto. There was a chief people officer at the company who was like, "You should talk to Warwick," and Warwick's like, "Will, you should try this. You should go and do this. Kind of get it out of your system. But when you come back, as soon as you land, I want you to come and see me." And I did. I made a point of doing that. So I went and did the masters. Um, Loved it. Um,
So it felt
Came
it
back.
felt immediately you were like, this is it, and it feels good and it's clicking, and in a way that it
It
hadn't
was
previously.
it was an incredibly it was a really tough challenge that I absolutely loved, like climbing Mount Everest. It was like, this is gonna kill me, or I'm gonna come out and just it'll be the best thing ever. And like I remember the first day they invite all the whole cohort into the room. It's probably like 150 of us, and they say, and one of the professors stands up at the front of the lecture and says, "If you are really strong in advanced mathematics and calculus and algebra, I want you to sit on that side of the hall. And if you're not, I want you to sit on that side of the hall. There are gonna be two streams of this program." And I lied, and I went and sat with the advanced mathematics group, and I
Will,
just wanted,
you
I
scofflaw.
wanted, yeah, shoot for the moon, right? And um, so I'm sitting there, and they're like, "Okay, you guys are going to go in stream A, you guys are going to go in stream B." Coming straight out of the lecture, I went straight to the bookstore and I bought all the linear algebra books and kind of mathematics for economics books I could find, and just went home and just I gotta get the bar up here to be part of this, and killed myself like just trying to like catch up. And then I came out, I kind of got first place in the macroeconomics exam for the cohort and did really well, ended up with a high distinction. Got invited into a kind of a PhD program. We can come back to that if you're interested.
I am.
And then did come back, came back to Sydney, looked up Warwick. "Hey Warwick, I'm back." Sat down with Warwick, and within minutes, Warwick's like, "Yeah, you did the right thing, and you're not coming back here. I'm going to put you onto some other people." And that was a really fortunate moment. There's probably like five sliding doors moments in my career. That's definitely one of them.
Man,
He
Will,
introduced me to a
Will, you're
senior partner at PwC.
you're aging us with the reference to sliding doors. For those in Gen Z listening to this podcast, there's an important movie about alternative universes that had an effect on people
Yeah,
our
yeah.
age.
Yeah, go down to your Blockbuster, you'll find it, right?
Yeah, exactly. The one remaining blockbuster in Alaska. You can probably find it on VHS. Uh, okay, so I mean, but there is a decision point here because you come back and you've got
Yeah,
this PhD offer. Which were
yeah,
you tempted by that? Were you like, hey, I might? Is there a universe
100%.
out there where you're like, hey, I'm an academic and this is what I want to do, and I just keep going down this academic path?
Yeah, 100%. And the uni kept kind of calling me, and I'm back in Sydney, and I was like, it's great to be back. Get to hang out with my parents and my brothers again and my friends, and that's there, and this is here, and it was a really strange moment, right? And you were there, you the same era, like there weren't like pages and pages of behavioral science jobs at the time, so here I am in Sydney with this kind of exotic degree and unemployed and racked up a massive debt from my travels. Um, but that's, yeah, this amazing other career that's quite different, the other side of the world. So yeah, that was a difficult time.
It sounds like space was a big part of it for you. Like, if the PhD had been in Australia, maybe you would have done it, but the prospect of being away from your family and friends was part of this for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think like my parents weren't super young. And dad had actually had a kind of a bad accident, pretty close to that. I think that was a factor for me. Just like you get to the point, I guess, where you think, hey, my parents aren't getting any younger. Um, PhD is a massive commitment. I know a lot of your kind of previous guests and listeners will be kind of on that program or have that in mind. I've never let it go, by the way. It kind of still sits in my head. I know you kind of had an experience as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that ever leaves you. And having a dad that like did a pretty grueling um, PhD kind of into his 40s. It's like, well, if dad could do it, geez, I could do it.
But it is a
Yeah,
big commitment, as you talk about. I was having lunch with
huge.
Steph Habif the other day, and
Yeah,
she frequently thinks of us as the same age because our kids are about the same age, but we're not. But
yeah,
we're at similar places in our career, and when you look at it, the real difference is just she spent this time in a PhD program and I didn't,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
makes the difference, right? It
yeah,
is a very serious time commitment to go into a program like that. Obviously, can have great benefits, and PhDs are wonderful things, but there is a cost to
yeah.
it.
Well, and I think this was my dad was actually I use him as a reference point a lot because it's kind of very close to me, obviously. But he was at the point in your government career when you're a government research scientist, they actually expect you to go through these things. So they kind of create space and funding for him to go through a master's and a PhD and kind of you're kind of working and you're contributing to science, but it was a great situation where he was I guess it was quite applied and practical research that he was doing. And that for me, it was always, I think people often think of like academia's over here and the real world's over here. And I always struggled with like why they weren't talking and listening to each other much more.
Yeah.
And we might get into it, but kind of the team I'm running today is very much trying to build those bridges much more, create that conversation. There's definitely frictions and kind of difficulties with it, but um, the idea of being curious and humble must mean that like there's other people outside of your immediate team or company that have been working on things for a very long time, and it just feels odd not to listen to them.
Which makes this decision really hard, right? Because to your point, it's not black and white. You can see there's an intersection. You can see there's opportunity here. So you come back, you talk to Warwick. He
Yeah.
introduces you to somebody at PwC. How do you make that decision between, this potential? I mean, these are really from a sort of optimum distinctiveness. They're very little Venn diagram overlap of these two choices. They're on different continents. They're of different times and lengths and spiritual feelings.
Yeah.
How do you make that choice?
Yeah. Um, it's a good question. And before I sat with work, I'd started to like talk to a few different companies and see, well, what could I do with this? And I was talking to some different consultancies. And I remember one, I'm in high up in a kind of client services room in top of Sydney in this beautiful view, and talking to these two partners of this consulting firm, and they are like, we should be looking at this kind of behavioral science thing. I want to come in, I want to try it with you guys. I want like let's see what we can do. And I remember one of them just sat back shaking his head and goes, well, it's not all it's not all cigars and brandy. Like, and his point was like, this just sounds fun and like silly. Like we're here to do work, you know. And he kind of dismissed it. And then when I went with Warren, I had a few of those types of conversations where people were just like closed door, like this is ridiculous. Um, and then I was like, whoa, God, have I done the wrong thing? Like, what's happening? And then Warwick introduced me to this senior partner at PwC he was kind of a very enthusiastic behavioral economics nerd that had read some of the early stuff. He'd actually interviewed Kahneman at a panel once with PwC. And he said, look, come in. I want you to meet some of the partners. Let's see if we can create a space. And I was brought in to do a slightly different job. So they ended up taking me on, but they took me on as a executive remuneration consultant. So as part of a team that was designing, I mentioned to you earlier, I was working in sales incentives design and liked it. And so I came in, I said, that was my way in. And I said, I'm going to give this a crack. And it was nice being back in Sydney. It's not a hard place to be. It's similar to San Diego. And I just said like, all right, let's do 3 or 4 or 5 years and see how we go. And then if I want to go back to the UK, I can do that.
And so you had it in your mind. I mean, I guess you had this model from your dad that also that a later stage PhD is possible.
Yeah.
So you were sort of
Yeah.
like, you're not saying no to the PhD. You're saying, I'm going to try this other thing. And if it, depending on how it goes, there is that opportunity to do a
Yeah.
PhD later. I certainly
Yeah. I
hear you on
never closed doors, right?
100%. Well, and I hear you on the people thinking it's silly. It's hard when we do these episodes, it's hard because you have to kind of situate it in time. And I think
Yeah.
now it's hard for people to remember a time when people did think this kind of thing was quite silly, right?
Yeah.
There's no CEO that would at this point say, "Oh, I don't use evidence for anything, and I just totally rely on that." Would be a silly thing to say, to be like, "I'm just a
Yeah.
gut-based CEO and I don't use evidence for anything." But in 2000, whatever, 2005,
Yeah.
lots of CEOs said that kind of shit. They were like, I'm
Yeah.
a tastemaker and data and evidence don't matter. And it's all
Yeah.
about me, the aesthetic creator of the universe version of, Steve Jobs knows what right is, and so do I.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that was like 2008, right? What happened in 2008?
Well, it turns out, as science has potentially suggested to us for a while, evidence might be useful in the
Yeah.
guiding of
Yeah.
human civilization.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at aviation or medicine, right? To say, let's just do it this by gut feel, it's not right.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I think you're right. I think it's come a long way. So to situate it in time, I was flying back from the UK. Um, the BIT was like a team of like 6 people in London. They're kind of just getting a start, and they were considered strange and novel and like risky at the time. I guess Nudge and Thinking Fast and Slow were just kind of coming out around then. Um, yeah, and there certainly weren't kind of roles designed as like this is a behavioral science team or role. Um, and so I was never going to find that job. And so, and you were there, same era, right?
Yeah. When you took this job at PwC, was it well, I'm giving up on behavioral science and I'm going to take this job, or was it, hey, I get in with this and then I'll try and continue to push them to pivot?
Totally. Well, it definitely wasn't giving up. I was like, let's see how I can use kind of this new kind of mindset, these new skills, this new kind of understanding of people. And it was a good context to do that. Like you're trying to design um, how you kind of attract and motivate and retain really senior people to do things for the benefit of their customers and their shareholders. And you've got this mechanism of money. How do you do that? That's really like it was behavioral science. The title and the job description and the offer letter didn't say that, but to me that was. And I think this is now where like there's obviously much more available and it feels more dedicated. But there's lots of roles out there that are behavioral science roles that might not say it in the title. And for me, this was that.
Yeah, it's
But
something
to
you
your
do,
point as well,
it's not something you are, right? So,
yeah,
so you,
fine.
even if you weren't a behavioral scientist on paper. You were doing the thing that was behavioral science. You're trying to change somebody's behavior given the levers that are available to you, which, is
Definitely.
cash and stock and all the things that are involved in executive competition. We've got these levers and I'm going to change somebody's behavior using them.
Yeah, totally. And like I also had to learn like the traditional and like there were standardized ways of doing things, and like that was awkward for me. I wanted to try this new thing, and but bringing the two together, really those early days, like really starting to build a muscle around like selling the story and influencing and kind of helping bring others along on like what about if we did this? What about this new way of thinking? Let's look at this differently. Like so, really, that was a great experience when you're pushing against like a lot of kind of traditional tools and methods with a new idea. It's really starts to build the storytelling muscle, the influencing muscle, and I think PwC was a fantastic experience for me to be able to bring big rooms of senior people along with me and the way I'm trying to think about things. So I learned a lot then.
And what did you, I mean, was it about trying to create examples that you could use to sort of
Yeah,
distribute? Was it co-teaching? Like, tell me a little bit about how you're telling the story in PwC to get people, because you do eventually
yeah,
become sort of the head of behavioral economics. And so how do you sort of bring people along on that journey?
yeah. So you may the guy called Jason Collins, you may have come across him. I bumped into him quite early in my career at PwC. He was an economist, um, and we're like he was like a really big kind of behavioral economics guy as well. And we were kind of we got to this point where we're like we're trying all these things. It wasn't quite clicking. Um, we're going to try something different here. And we did a few things, right? So we said, well, there's not really a vibrant local community around this stuff. So we're kind of talking to ourselves a bit. It's like, all right, let's set up a community. So we set up like a meetup group um, that uh, that had our first session. I have this big kind of hall with lots of seats, and it's completely empty with like 2 minutes before it starts. We've got a few people eventually, but it was a really hard start. That's now grew to like 4,000 members over time, which became one of the biggest meetup groups of its kind in the world. Um, we used to kind of host events. And then we got to the point where it's like we need case studies. Like we don't have kind of an example we can point to. We keep referencing other people's stuff. So Jason and I are like, all right, let's just build some case studies. Let's go and we kind of on the side of the desk just started trialing things. Like we met us one of the wives of one of the partners was running a school charity, and it's like we can come and hack your brochures, and we're going to increase the donations to your school, and we got like a 30% lift in donations. All right, let's put that as a case study. We we got staff like to take up the benefits available to them in the kind of the staff benefits program. And then one night we went into the building, 13-story building, and we no one's using the stairwell. Everyone's going straight to the elevator, kind of automatic behavior. Let's stick some footprints into the stairwell, see what that does. We go down to the facilities guy in the basement. Can you give us the data of who's swiping in and out of the stairwell? He's like, sure. So we got 30% more people taking the stairs rather than the elevator. Eventually, now we're going into client meetings and we're saying, we've got case studies. We've got a community behind us. We're demonstrating like there's an ROI and a lift here. We actually had tangible material. And we got to the point where partners were calling us up and saying, look, we're trying to pitch this thing, but they keep asking for the behavioral guys to come. Can you come pitch with us? Because they're asking for you guys. And eventually PwC is like, this is a thing. We put every year PwC runs a global innovation competition, and we put in some of these case studies and said, let's just see how it goes. It's like 180 entries from 60 different countries. And we get an email saying like, oh, you guys, congrats, you're in the top 50. I was like, oh, that's cool. That was fun. You're in the top 20, congrats. And then the next email is like, you're in the top 10. And eventually it's like, you guys are in the top 5, the global innovation competition for PwC. It's just like blowing our mind because like looking at the other entries, the bar is so high. They say, you got to come to Milan and pitch in front of all the senior PwC partners because you're in the top 5 and we have to kind of find a winner. So, all right, I'll come to Milan and this will be just written it off. It's just going to be a fun trip, and I'm
It's a
happy
boondoggle.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy with fifth place. That's amazing. Um, we did our pitch. Again, the other entries just blew my mind of like, how good is this? And we won. It's like, wow, congratulations, you've won the global innovation competition. Come back. The CEO wants to meet us. He's like, you got to do this. Like, this is a big thing now. Like, PwC's behind you. Let's go. And that was really exciting. It's like this is now kind of official. Like the so that I actually then had much more license to kind of break away from the role I was in, trialing new stuff, doing more talks around Sydney, like building that community, and we got a profile.
Yeah, I mean, so I that push to pull motion is a really important one. I mean, I think a lot of times people are sitting around waiting for the pull, and I'm like, no, you gotta push in, right? It's gonna be an empty
Oh
lecture
yeah,
hall at the beginning. It's gonna be you doing stuff off the side of your desk,
oh yeah,
it's any, I always use the mythical kebab shop. I'm like, if your brother owns a kebab shop, like start fucking with
yeah.
the menu, right? Like just, whatever is available to you. I love that you started with the story of, a partner's wife. It is
Yep,
absolutely that. It's like look around
yep,
you at where you have an unnatural advantage, where there is someone you can convince to let you do something, and then just do it.
yeah. Have you seen there's a Steve Jobs quote? Like I love this quote. He's like whether you like Steve Jobs or not, but I'm sure you've come across it and check it out on YouTube. But it's like most of the time people think like you've got to kind of have this good career where you stay safe and don't bump into the walls too much. But occasionally you can push on the wall and like something interesting is going to pop out. And I just think I really like that. That resonates a lot. Like we were pushing on lots of stuff and lots of stuff wasn't working and it was frustrating being told to go away, stop being annoying, get back to your desk. But some stuff worked and um, create like we were incredibly say we Jason and I were kind of doing this in the early days of PwC. We're very lucky, but also like try to make your own luck. So try to put yourself out there, find those half chances that or low probability chances. Um, be risky and try if it's not there, try to build it and just throw it into the world and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, and you can connect this back to some of your earlier stories. There is a grinded out sort of, those mundane jobs, whether it's scrubbing glassware or stalking a target. You're building that muscle of just
Yeah,
tenacity, 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 tenacity. It's hard and it sucks, and I lose some of the time, and it doesn't work some of the time, and uh,
yeah,
I was talking earlier today to our friend Payush, and he and I were talking about the fact that like, clients always expect everything to work, but the reality is
yeah,
just like you just got to fail a bunch, right? And so the best way to do that is when you don't have clients yet, right? Because there's nobody looking over your shoulder going like, that was a failure, waggle your finger,
yeah,
right? When you're doing it off the side of your desk, it's fine to fail 82,000 times until you figure it out.
yeah. We had more recently we've been able to work with like quite senior, very high profile behavioral scientists. We've been able to bring them over to the bank, and there's a really cool moment where I won't mention the name, but like a big name in the field is standing in front of a room full of our executives and said, "We're going to do this, and I want everyone in the room to be ready to know that like a lot of this stuff is not going to work." And just kind of that tension in the room of like, what? It's not guaranteed. Uh, and to have senior people like that have like had really big success of and high profile books and kind of impact in the world to come into an established organization to say that I think was a great moment and credit to my current employer. Like they've had the vision and provided the support and runway to kind of do that and have that appetite of longer time frames, probably lower probability projects, trying lots of stuff.
Well, and you sort of see that at PwC too, right? As they're sucking you back in, the CEO saying you got to do this. I mean, we're talking about the mid 2010s. Like this is not
Yeah,
2026 where people are, this is somewhat more established. I mean, even then, this was still early sketchy
yeah,
days. I don't know. I don't think in that era any of the other consultancies had yet sort of put themselves out there. I mean, that's a risky maneuver.
Yeah, good credit to PwC as well. I think the partners we're working with there, and then like to recognize that as part of that kind of that award with like all those other entries. And you're right. I think good vision. Like I'm very lucky. I was very lucky early on um, at that time where behavioral science was to have people say like, this feels important, and we've got a guy and we've got a team here that can do this. Like we've got to back this. And I credit vision for my recent employers, both of them.
That's how did you know it was time to? I mean, you're having all the success at PwC. You're getting the attention of the CEO. Like you're getting this global innovation award. How did you know when it was time to leave? I mean, I think one of the things that we hear from people sometimes is just, I stay too long, or how'd you know it was time?
Yeah, I think so I was actually pulled. I wasn't I didn't jump away. Yeah, I was giving a talk in the city at a pub. So we're part of the meetup. We had this kind of venue which is like upstairs in a city pub, and we used to get like really fun. It was a really fun vibe, and I was up there kind of presenting, and um, gentleman in the audience comes up afterwards and says, "Look, I'm from this bank. Probably heard of it, and biggest bank in Australia." And he's like, "We have this mission to improve the financial well-being of our customers. Um, we've got this new fintech guy. He's come over from the US, and he keeps talking about behavioral economics. Do you want to come and help us with this mission?" And I pretty much jumped at it. Like felt really good to me. The challenge with consulting, as you know, is like kind of shorter assignments. You don't necessarily get to see the work go through. You kind of a lot of context switching, like working with health and charities and government and financial services. And I wanted to have kind of in my later days in PwC, I was really looking for a mission, and I wanted a place where what's a context where we could have disproportionate impact on the world, um, a good behavioral problem, and like improving financial well-being and financial services felt like such a good fit. Uh, so I took him up on the offer. I went and met the executives at the bank, and we kind of they're like, "This sounds amazing. This just kind of feels like a good approach for us. Do you mind writing the job description? Because we're not sure like what this is, like how to write it." So that was the second time in my career I had to write my own job description.
I had to do that at Microsoft, and they're like, "We need you to do it, and we're legally obliged to publish it. So we need you to write it in such a way that you could be the only possible person that could do this job.
Yeah.
We already know we want you, but we have to legally publish it. So we need you to not only write it, but write it in such a way that it is only you that could have possibly apply for the job."
I,
How did
I
you?
think that happens more. I think that happens more than people think. I think that the new roles, it's very easy to pull out an old JD and put it up online. It's harder for an organization that's innovative to write a new JD that doesn't exist anywhere in the world and put that up, because it's just by definition it's not something the organization knows a lot about. So like I said, more than once I've had to do it myself, and I know my father's done it. And um, if there's a job that you think if you think there's a gap there and you can really kind of disproportionately help an organization, write a JD out and send it to them. I reckon it happens more than people think.
Pushing on the wall, seeing what pops out.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this does sound like less of a fraught decision for you. So you have this decision going into PwC where the PhD is really attractive and you're trying to find all these things. What made this one different? How did you, what about the switch to Commonwealth really felt like, oh man,
yeah,
this is, there's obviously a social aspect, right? When someone approaches you and says, hey, we want to make people financially more
yeah,
healthy, that's like
yeah,
crack for a behavioral scientist. They're like, make the world
yeah,
better. And you're like, what?
yeah. Uh, a lot of things like I wanted an opportunity to start my own team. I consulting was kind of I consulting I a lot of who I am, a lot of the skills I have today was made in that environment. It's like a pressure cooker environment. You got to be able to like um influence and kind of um, sell like what you're doing and differentiate, and you've got to have a commercial edge as well as um, an impact on people. So I learned a lot from that, but it was also like it's it can be quite exhausting after a while, and I wanted a purpose where I could build a team more slowly. Um, Commonwealth Bank's been around for a very long time. It's not a kind of pop-up company. This is a long-term thing with like trying to do big, bold initiatives. The idea of I, a lot of the early behavioral science coming through, right, was Greg Davies at Barclays. It's like Save More Tomorrow with Benazzi and Thaler. Like these were the early papers. It's an environment where there's lots of data and lots of distribution. So you're kind of working with millions of customers, and they trust you. They're using your digital products all the time. So really rich kind of environment to understand existing behaviors and opportunities. The purpose of like improving the financial lives of millions of people. Like all of these things together added up to like this is what I want to do next. And yeah, it wasn't. The CEO called me, the PwC CEO called me on the last day and said, "Unpack your bags. You're staying here. We want to do more of this." And I was like, my mind was pretty made up. I was like, I want to go and try this with a really big financial services organization and a financial well-being purpose.
And you hit on something earlier that I want to talk a little bit about, which is the difference between, you know, pointing people to the river, but trying to get that looking at that horse and going, man, I really wish you would drink this, versus being able to actually build it and have a little
Yeah.
more of a builder mentality. Has that materialized for you at Commonwealth? Has it felt good to like be able to build things? Are there challenges in that?
Yeah. Well, again, I never want to make any of this sound easy. This was, and you know it as well, right? Like we're still in the mid 2010s here. So behavioral science still finding kind of mainstream traction at this time. Um, so a couple things were hard about the early days. There was one, there were there were groups of like strong supporters, and then there were groups that were much more kind of tentative and skeptical about this. And so the decision was made to put Will on a contract rather than offer a full permanent role. And it's like, okay, we're going to try it, but you've got a runway and it's not forever. And I know the BIT was set up similarly, right, with the sunset clause. And now that really focuses the energy because you're in here, you've got this role, you've got a limited runway, and you've got to make it work, or you're going to go kind of find another thing to do somewhere else. And very, very quickly, it's like, all right, let's get out there. Let's start creating a portfolio. Let's start creating some case studies. I was just on the phones. I'm meeting people. I'm running workshops. I'm running presentations. Team of one in an organization with tens of thousands of employees. I'm in call centers, like working on calling scripts, like tracking data, working with the employee teams around kind of employee behaviors. And pretty quickly, able to kind of demonstrate not amazing, but like a small portfolio of wins and case studies, and got to the point where it's like, okay, you can have a full job, you can have a permanent role, and and then being able to get my first hire,
How did
really
you
got lucky. Yeah.
how did you make the case for that? I mean, that is the if there's an epochal change in behavioral
Mm.
science organizations, it is going like 2 to 3 is not nearly as big as 1 to 2. 1 to 2 is a big
Yeah.
gap for a lot of people. How did the one to
Yeah.
two come about?
Yeah, it's a great question. The case studies and kind of the early noise I was making was starting to find its way into more senior executive groups. I was fortunate enough to meet the head of the retail bank very early on in my Combank career, and he had a huge vision and was kind of very intellectually curious and understood this very quickly. And there was a um, really strong push at the time. So at this time, the way to improve financial well-being that in the industry was like to provide more disclosure. and lots more information and lots of education. And these things weren't having the breakthrough that would, like banks were hoping, or governments and regulators were hoping.
Will, I don't know what you're
And we got
talking
to this,
about. If you just tell people the right thing to do,
yeah,
historically, that has been very, very good at getting them to do the right thing. Do we all
yeah,
should
yeah.
work
We all
out
read
for
the terms
90
and
minutes a
conditions, right?
day and,
Yeah,
eat fruit and
that was it. And so like these big, thick disclosure documents weren't changing behavior. And so he got it very quickly. And he said, well, like, show me rather than a one person, like what would a team look like? And I didn't put one role on the page. I actually built out like what a good starting team would look like. And it's like, all right, well, let's go, like approved. And um, started kind of recruiting. I got very, very lucky with my first few recruits. So Rafael Batista Bissara came over to Sydney. It was a big kind of career jump and risk for him. Um, Espinoza, Egbon, you should definitely get these guys on the show if you can. Uh, and then just kind of it started to really pick up. Like we then started to have a profile. Now it's a team. It's not just like the weird guy in the corner anymore. And the projects became bigger scale. Get a little bit of budget, a bit of media. It's kind of a bit of a snowball. And there were a couple of home run projects in those first few years that really put us on the map, and happy to touch on those. But that combination of kind of luck and just a small group of kind of early recruits that were just really tenacious and skilled and um, and good at kind of connecting into a really big organization.
so this is, I mean, it is pretty early days, right? Because it is, as we said, it's not 2026. How did you find and hire and decide on those first couple of people? I mean, you're used to being a team of one. You've been a team of one here for a long time, right? Even at
Yeah,
PwC,
yeah.
you're an expert called into other teams. How did you transition into like, hey, I got to decide how to hire and who to hire? Because there's options, right? There's
Yeah, yeah.
nobody's a perfect fit in that era. How did you
Yep.
decide, who to bring in?
Yeah, it's a couple things, right? So when you're a really small team, you don't you don't necessarily need deep, narrow specialists. You need people that can kind of cover a lot of bases. So I was looking for people that were, I guess, T-shaped to an extent, but really strong on kind of the behavioral foundations. Um, but able to kind of present and influence and like under, quickly pick up an understanding of a financial services context. So when you're a really small team, like you need those type. When you're a much bigger team, then you can kind of start to specialize more. Um, it was very quickly we set up. I set up like a behavioral science team. I got to set up a behavioral science process. Otherwise, this is like I've got to be able to kind of take my own medicine here. So everything was kind of blinded, and we were like case study based, kind of not interested in your gender or your kind of location or your university name. How well do like here's some exercises, show us how well you can do the job. Good talent recruitment team here in Combank working with me. They're like, whoa, this is cool. Okay, this is a new process. And that, pleased to say, that process still exists today. So we're actually in the early days recruiting some candidates that we probably wouldn't have if we were just looking straight at the LinkedIn profile, right? Um, and then yeah, just kind of started to bring in kind of this early talent, and then go from there. And I think got very in a sense got very lucky, but also had a process and a kind of a goal.
Yeah. And one of the things that sometimes really senior people talk about on the show is, they talk about missing, the more executive stuff you do, you're not really a behavioral scientist anymore. You just become an executive, right? Like spend a ton of time just managing up, fighting for budget, hiring, doing all the things you need
Yeah,
just to be a good exec. Do
yeah.
you miss the days of, you in a project off the side of your desk trying to, make it work?
Yes and no. The you're definitely right. Like there's this quote of like, if you get promoted, anyone that gets promoted enough times ends up being kind of a salesperson, um, or as you say, kind of an executive or corporate administrator. And those early days where I was in the call center and I was like rewriting the scripts and kind of crunching the data. And like I do miss that. It was a little bit chaotic. There's also a weird context, right? Like the one person in the bank trying to do it. Obviously, with lots of like working closely with lots of other teams, but my team today will tell you that I am very annoying. Like I'll come down and kind of want to work with them, and they're like, "We'll get out of here. Like we got this."
Get out of my
And
project, sir.
but I'm like, I do miss it. I do like being in there, and they do have it. It was a long time ago that I stopped being the best behavioral scientist in the team. I have now a team of like excellent experts in lots of different specializations, and I learn from them. I'm kind of here to make sure they're set up to kind of reach their potential.
Yeah, we're talking about doing a special episode, which you should totally join us, of folks who really have built big teams and reached those things
Yeah,
about what does that behavioral science executive layer look like? Because it is so
yeah,
different from
yeah,
just, I mean, running a project in those early scrappy days, there are relations, of course, some of the skills you learn then you use now, like some of that same pushing in scrappiness exists as executive, but it's a very different job. I have 600 people
yeah.
in my org. It's just I have 600 people. It's just, most of my job is having 600 people.
That's incredible. I don't know how you get the time for like podcasts and
Good
all
leadership,
your other work.
man.
Yeah,
Accountability and autonomy, things behavioral science are good at. So, I mean, I think that executive piece is big. Now, I'm
yeah,
gonna I'm gonna put forward the hypothetical that's not gonna happen. Combank is a lovely,
yeah,
wonderful bank that's not gonna go anywhere. Please, Combank people listening to this, I love you.
yeah,
Wonderful institution. But Combank goes away tomorrow. This job goes away tomorrow.
yeah,
What would you
yeah.
do? I mean, what interests you about the next steps for you in that next era of like what Will takes forward? Like where are the places that are interesting to you these days?
Yeah, I'm the kind of guy that suffers from like liking too many things, and there's like five different areas I want to go. Like you say, if like everything changed tomorrow, there's so many different ideas. Like I think there's clearly like this like an AI boom, and like what is that going to mean for the world? I got really interested in those questions and how it actually turns into like a positive for the world. Um, I think I don't know why there's not more behavioral science teams working in like human HR context and like employee context. I know there's some excellent ones out there, but just in my opinion, not enough. That feels like such an important place, and you'll often see there's a lot of HR teams still operating on kind of very traditional ways when there's like a lot of behavioral upside. So I've always thought about that. Um, Going back, doing more research. Um, Now that I've kind of got a bit more like space in my career and my kids are growing up a little bit. And then we're doing a lot of ethnography here at the moment. I actually hired the bank's first ever anthropologist not long ago, and I'm just fascinated by like I did at very early days. I did some kind of observational work, but I really that's part of the work that the team's doing today that I really like. So kind of getting obsessed with all these things at once, and that's can't pick my favorite child, Matt.
I mean, this is, we've probably done 50 of these, and everybody is unique and everybody is special and different. And I love the stories, but you see some themes emerge. And
Yeah,
certainly one of them is, behavioral scientists are omnivores as an
yeah,
intersectional discipline that lives at the intersection of sort of applied science and psychology and economics. And, there's lots of things that we're bringing into this discipline,
yeah,
still united around the science, sciences as behavior as outcome science as process, but
yeah.
a lot of diversity within that. There is a little bit of an omnivore's dilemma where all of
Oh
us
yeah,
are sort of interested in
I love
lots of
that.
things.
I love that word. And I call it the blessing and the curse of behavioral science, right? It applies anywhere you have a human making a decision.
Right.
Now, that's almost everywhere. So how do you that's why I think that's why it's important to start with like a context or a purpose that you're passionate about rather than going out and looking for the behavioral science role as like what is the start with the place where you want to have an impact. And that could be anything, it could be education or health or um, charity. Um, and behavioral science will have a place there, right? It applies a blessing and the curse. It applies everywhere. So then it's just about finding that the behavioral wrinkle and like, okay, how do you kind of explain that and harness it and make it change? And that's where behavioral science roles live, like everywhere. But start with like where do you want to apply it, I guess.